Welcome on another episode of Democracy Innovators podcast, and our guest of today is Gianluca Sgueo. So thank you, Gianluca, for being here and for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Your experience, you have a lot of experience in this field. And I see from your LinkedIn that you have as a description, digital transformation, democracy, and global affairs. But if I go on your website, your experience is, you really have a lot of experience. And I wouldn't know where to start. So as a first question, I would like to ask you, when you first thought that technology could be helpful to democratic systems and to citizens?
Yes. Actually, I think I am the kind of professional profile that it could be described as an hybrid profile, which is not necessarily always a good thing. Sometimes, you feel you don't belong professionally to a specific field, but I really think is it's not just mine, but I mean it's my trademark, combining different sectors. And these sectors are technological innovation, or if you prefer, digital transition, democratic participation, and interest representation as well, in a global sphere. And so I told you this because the interest in technology, academically speaking, came a little later compared with my interest into democracy. I am a lawyer by education, so I have a degree in law and one in political sciences, or science of public administration, to be precise. And then I enrolled in a PhD in public and administrative law. And my PhD thesis was about participatory models across different legal systems. Italy, a few European states, yes, the European Union, and the United States. So I compared how different systems are consulting citizens and are engaging them into policymaking. And my PhD was done in between 2007 and 2010, roughly. So technologies, of course, were already there. But if I go back and I read my thesis, actually my thesis was then published as a book. My focus is not on technology. Technology is there. There is a little bit of it, but the focus is about the globalization of democracy. The title of the book is an Italian book, is Experiments with Global Democracy. In Italian. So I was interested in that. And then little by little after that, so after 2010, I realized that I was exploring more and more the implant of digital technology within administrative procedures meant to consult citizens. And so the balance between the interest in democracy and the interest in technology changed, and I can say that now I am still interested in both, but I'm starting more from observing the technology and how this technology is changing the democratic sphere. So over the years, technology has become more relevant as an element of my analysis. And so artificial intelligence, digital platforms, and so on.
You mentioned participation. That is something that is very interesting to me, and I think that in our society people do not really participate a lot, and so there are also ways to maybe to help them participate, to help citizens to participate. I'm thinking about gamification, and I know that you have written a book
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, correct. So yes, I'm. So again, I don't want to make too many distinctions, but when you study democracy, when you look at democracy, you at least learn to distinguish between the participatory democracy and the representative democracy. Both are touched by the relevance of technology, of course, but what I'm interested in looking at is, in particular, participatory democracy. And I think both participatory democracy and representative democracy, so the elections in the latter case, are interested by the same critical elements. And one of these critical elements is the fact that people are less engaged. People are going to vote in lower numbers compared with the past, and they're just not interested. And that applies also to how we as citizens engage into the decisions of our administrations, what I will call more exactly participatory democracy. So this is a very common problem. This is something that has been acknowledged already a few years ago. But the interesting thing is that when technology, digital technology, became overspread across Western governments, there was a clear moment in which many scholars and politicians and practitioners thought that this technological implant could be used to solve the problem of participation. In other words, since we have now a digital tool to interact, it will be much easier for me to be interested and for the policymakers to listen to what citizens have to say. But that unfortunately did not happen. We have plenty of very good examples, and in this podcast we heard about a lot of very nice what will be called best practices. On the other hand, I think that the problem remains, and it's even more striking, this problem, because it's true that a digital technology help people in principle to be in touch without much efforts. And so you mentioned gamification. It's something I've been studying for a while, and as you said, something I've been publishing about. And the idea is quite simple. I'll just summarize it, and then, of course, if you want to know more, we can dig into it a little more. The idea is that we can design. This is another word that I really like, design. We can design participatory spaces with some game elements, so some elements that are resembling a game, not a pure game, something that is resembling a game, and that ideally, I want to be precise, ideally should help citizens to be more motivated, because we all like to play. It's something that is part of our learning experience. We as child learn things by playing, and so the use of games, it's something that we as humans use for a long part of our life in order to learn things. And that there is a moment in which we think that gaming is trivial and it's not for adults any longer, but actually there is a lot of game design in many things that we do, like in marketing strategies, for example. Now, the idea is that we could engage citizens more by offering them a gamified environment. Now, if you ask me, is this working or not? My answer would be, it depends. It's not the solution to the problem. And we have some very nice examples to tell, but on the other hand, we have many examples that didn't work.
So we have a very good example of best practices. And so what is missing? I mean, is this like, I don't know, related to how institution works? Why these solutions are not implemented or tested in a very wide way?
Yeah. Well, that's an excellent question because it's actually the picture of the problem. As you said, we have many examples. When I publish the book, and also occasionally when I still write on the topic, it's always nice to have a list of examples. There again, there's plenty of them at all levels, from the very local level to the national level, even some supranational example that worked very well. In order to answer your question, I need to make a step back to how game design works in order to then give a possible explanation of why the gamification didn't work so far in all participatory experiments. And so game design basically reproposes, as I said before, the elements of a game within participatory processes, which means that you have basically three elements. You have a set of rules, you have a competition. The competition could be against other people or could be against yourself. It doesn't really matter. And third, you have a reward. And again, don't think necessarily about money or something tangible. It can be anything like passing to another level or being acknowledged to have succeeded in something. So the reward is, let's say, the conclusion of your journey and maybe the beginning of a new step. Now, all these elements, if are well combined, well designed within a participatory processes, as we said again, could work very well. What is the problem? It's another concept that is very familiar to all those who study gaming or video gaming or any of these fields. And this is called the curve of engagement, which it really looks like a curve. And I like you to think at any game you might have played over the last few years. Could be anything from something very simple on your mobile phone, or maybe if you are into video gaming, anything that is related with a console gaming, and any of that, or a board game if you like. And you see, we have this curve that goes up because if the game is well designed, it looks interesting, it looks fascinating, we want to spend more time with it, and the complexity of the game is well balanced. So we see that if we play, maybe we fail, but we can improve, and so next time we will defeat, for example, the boss of the level, and we scale up to the next level. So it's actually increasing. And then there is a moment, sooner or later, even with the best possible game, there is a moment in which either you feel that it's too complicated, or you don't have time to play that game in order to progress, or instead you become so good that it's a little boring, and so the curve start to descend and you are less engaged. Now, this is in pure gaming, okay? But the same metrics, as I said, could be implanted in a participatory process. So well, obviously you have a set of rules, but you can have incentives, and you have a sort of competition between participants, and you have a sort of reward. And that's the problem. It is not meant to last for too long. You have to reinvent the system in order to re-engage the participants. You don't have a single solution that will work forever. There is no video game, even Super Mario. Super Mario, I think everybody played Super Mario. After more than 30 years, we have still new versions of Super Mario. And the concept is similar. And I still enjoy going back to Super Mario and play it a little bit. But even Super Mario, a classic, has a curve. After a while, it's too complex, I don't have time, or it's too easy, I'm bored, I'm changing. And so the same applies to game design into participatory processes. And so that explains why we have a lot of single shot great examples. Some of them lasted a little longer, but nothing that we could say, okay, this is the benchmark. This is how you design gaming into participation, democratic participation, because it returns great results. There's nothing like that. And the reason is that, as in any other game, people, participants in this case, need to be stimulated in a different way.
I'm thinking about actual forms of gamification. Like, can we think about the school system as a sort of kind of gamification? Because it has a set of rules, it has in some way some sort of competition and also some kind of rewards. And also, if we can think about gamification instead having collaboration instead of competition.
Yeah, I think I will answer this second remark first. I think you can cooperate, you can collaborate in order to achieve something, and that is a sort of competition. The concept of competition has to be understood in a very broad way. So it doesn't necessarily mean me against you, or me and you against X and Z, or something like that. Could be something like that, but could also be me and you, we have to cooperate in order to achieve a certain result. There is, I'm giving you an example. There is a very nice experiment that was done a few years ago by a municipality in the United States. The idea of the municipality was, we are expanding over the years, and so social bonds have been depleting. And we want our local population, we are still a small municipality, but again, growing up in numbers. And so we want to try to have social bonds reestablished between different communities that are living in the same urban area. And so they basically created this virtual money. It was called Macon money. The municipality was called Macon. I don't remember in which state of the United States it is. So, but the name of the municipality is Macon or Macon. So they basically created this virtual currency, and they distributed tasks among citizens that will participate in this sort of competition in order to find the other half of the currency and create a bond, a social bond. So you see, in this case, there was a clear cooperation aim, but there was a competition as well. And so absolutely, you can cooperate, and that could also be a sort of competition against yourself in order to achieve another level. And it also resembles education or schooling system in a way. There are a lot of theories that suggest to have gamification used as a learning system. Actually, many of the platforms that provide online learning are based on gamification dynamics. You can think about the very famous Duolingo platform, the one that is meant to teach you a language. Or you can also go on this very big platform like Coursera, in which you basically access to learning in different subjects. All of them are based on a very clear gamification dynamics. So you have a progress, you are awarded, I don't know, points or stars or levels, whatever it is, and you progress, and so you achieve other credits. It's a very simple metric that can work very well in education.
Do you have in mind any other example of gamification that they tried around the world?
Oh yeah, sure. Many of those. One very interesting example, which has a story behind it, which is worth to be known, is the story of Evoke, that was created by the World Bank. So we're talking of a very important international institutions. For those who don't know it, the World Bank is, yes, an international institution that was created after the Bretton Woods agreements in order to regulate, not regulate the global finance, but actually in order to loan money to countries that will get this money and in exchange would apply democratic reforms. And that is still the role of the World Bank and also of the International Monetary Fund, which is the sister organization that was also created in the same period. Now, if you go on the website of the World Bank, it's an incredible source of information. They have very highly profiled professionals that are producing very interesting data sets, for example, about a lot of topics, really a lot of topics. It's very broad, and it's a truly incredible source of information. A few years ago, and all this information is actually available for free. It's just there. You go online and you can download the papers, and you have the reports. It's plenty of those. And so a few years ago, the World Bank did a sort of internal investigation, and the aim was to see what was the reaction by the general public. So what people would take of all this material. And the result, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the result was striking. Just a very tiny percent of the whole amount of documents that were published by the World Bank. When I say tiny, I mean like 1 or 2%, something like that, had been downloaded at least once. And a part of these downloads was done by people working at the World Bank. So what was the result? We have this incredible amount of information which nobody knows, nobody uses, and people in the best case scenario think that we are the technocrats that are imposing draconian measures on national economies. That was the very the best case scenario of people knowing something, actually not knowing something about the World Bank. And so the institution tried to make an initiative that could bring people into knowing the institution, and they created this Evoke. Evoke was a sort of board game that was played globally. Okay, and every week you will have a mission. And so this mission consisted of different tasks. The idea was the world is on the verge of a global crisis, very hard global crisis, and we have to intervene doing something. So what should we do? What we are supposed to do? Famine, disruption of chains of production, this kind of stuff. And so people would engage in different tasks on a weekly basis. They will go through a process that obviously was meant to teach people what the World Bank does, because these are typical tasks that people at the World Bank handle in their daily job. And the final task, the so-called evocation, was to find an original idea to be possibly implemented by the World Bank, and the best idea would be called to Washington D.C., where the World Bank is located, the headquarters, and being awarded a cash prize. I think in that case was like a small amount of money. What was the aim? Obviously, the World Bank doesn't need just people suggesting ideas. That was part of the game design, but it wasn't the main goal. The main goal was to have as many people as possible sharing information, learning about the World Bank, sharing information with other contacts, and increasing the interest in the institution. And there is also another thing that I discuss in a few publications in which I describe this example, because one possible question is, okay, so how many people participated? Was this something that attracted hundreds of thousands of participants? No. I think the whole number of participants was in the number of a few thousands globally. So you realize quite a tiny number. But the question that I think it's important to ask is not just how many, but how engaged these people were. If you look at the pure volume, again, you don't have an incredible response by citizens. But if you look at the interest of these people, you might have a different result. So you could see that these people were actually quite engaged in the experiment. So it was, in that sense, quite successful.
I was wondering, why do people act in a certain way? I know it's a very hard question. Like,
what do you mean exactly? Can help me to clarify?
Yeah, I was thinking because you said that actually the data set were downloaded just by a very small amount of people. And when there was a sort of, I would say, economic incentive, then not so many people, but still a good amount of people and very interested people, I would say, explored this kind of data. And so I'm thinking about the economic incentive, but also I'm thinking about why, without the economic incentive, people do not look about something that is actually could be very interesting. I mean, maybe people read a book about, I don't know, something, and they could obtain the same information, maybe in a different
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah. Okay, I get your question, and it brings us back to the reason of gamification, which is one possible solution again. And also brings back to our the first question you asked. So the technology and what is the reason why technology is now so interesting to analyze for someone who has an interest in democracy as a possible solution, but also a crisis. So the principle is that for many people, participating in the democratic processes is not perceived as a solution any longer. So if you look at the civic engagement in all its forms, so electoral participation, engaging in a charity, for example, donating money for a civic cause, or any other activity that we will consider part of a democratic civic sphere. If you look at what our parents and grandparents, so I'm talking of the the 70s, the 60s, and before were doing compared with what people do now, you would probably agree with saying that the whole civic capital has been shrinking over time. So the people are spending less time in these civic activities. We said it before. They go less people go to vote. If you look at, for example, let's take a country like Italy. It depends on the country, of course, but in a country like Italy, in the 70s, there was million of Italians who had an official subscription to a political party. And now political parties have very low number of people. It's very tiny. It's like less than 70% less than 20 or 30 years ago. So the principle is it's not appealing anymore. And for a lot of reasons, really a lot of reasons that are related with the crisis of democracy, the lack of social mobility, the fact that we feel there are less opportunities, and also the fact that technologies have capitalized much of the attention of people. Okay, so all these reasons are contributing. And now we go to the game design. You mentioned the financial incentive. Let me say that it's not necessarily a financial incentive. That is one possibility. It can work very well, but it can also be something completely unrelated with giving you money. It could be having your name mentioned on the first in the first place of ranking. And I'm going to give you an example in a second. So it's another very interesting example. But before that, and that's the potential of game design. The potential is, what if I give you a framework that will make the experience more appealing? So it's not just the fact that we could win, I don't know, 10 euros. But it's also the fact that maybe me and you, we could spend 1 hour together thinking about how to solve a problem. And maybe you have a resource, I have a contact, and maybe we can like get close to that result. And we can do that in an engaging way. Maybe in the, at least in the short term, let's remember the short termism of this kind of experiment, but maybe in the short term, this is resulting into some interest. So in other words, people need to be stimulated in order to find interesting a participatory experiment. And this is not original. I'm just quoting the very basic idea of behavioral sciences. All the theory of nudge and Richard Thaler, Cass Sunstein, all this theory is precisely that. You can create a framework in which you push people, you give a sort of push to people in order to find more interesting an example. And if you allow me, I'm going to mention another very interesting case, which it did not include a financial incentive. It was gamified and resulted into a very interesting outcome. Now we are in Latin America. We are in Peru, and more precisely in the capital city of Peru, Lima, which was at least one of the most polluted cities in the world. And one of the reasons of this pollution was the fact that the city is very large, and it has a number of places where people just throw their garbage, and these places are not controlled. So as you can imagine, this is contributing to air pollution and environmental pollution and causing a lot of troubles. But the municipality didn't have the resources to make more controls, to hire people that will control how the garbage was treated by the population. So what the municipality decides to do is to create this participatory experiment. They call it Gallinazo Avisa, which is the voters are checking. They train, I think it was 10 vultures, this animal that live in that area of the world, in order to, and this animal eat garbage, so they enjoy finding places where they can, find food. And they put a GoPro camera on the bodies of these vultures. So when they fly, they actually record the area. And then what the municipality does is to take these videos and upload it on a website and ask the citizens, can you help us watch these videos? We don't have the capacity, but if you can help us, it was hours of videos. And you can spot an illegal site within the city, you can actually tell us, and we will at least try to intervene. And it's a huge success. And the reward was that the names of those who had spent hours watching these videos were mentioned on the official website. It was so successful that at a certain point, there were citizens who were taking with their mobile phones videos, and they were sending it to the municipality to say, this is also where you should intervene. And again, an example, in this case, no money given, but the fact that it was, so watching a very boring 2 or 3 hours footage of, an air vision of the city resulted into something helpful for the municipality that could intervene on the illegal sites.
I'm thinking about this crisis of democracy and why people do not feel that participating is a solution. And I'm thinking about how information is power in two different ways. Because there are media, social media, and as you say, the attention of people is captured by this new social media. And at the same time, also information is power, because let's say if there is something wrong in my town, in the place where I live, and I know that I can send an email, I don't know, to the mayor, to someone inside the administration of the town, public administration, I can actually do something and change also the place where I live. And yeah, maybe because before I thought why people are not participating, because they have more distraction. Yes, as you said, related to media, because it's not related to time.
No. It probably that is another problem. The let's say the intangible assets that you need in order to participate could make the difference between types of participants. I explain myself. Time is an intangible asset. So let's say in your life there are moments in which you feel you have more time, and moments in which you feel your time is limited. Typically, when you are younger and you are in your school age, you feel you have plenty of time, so you have time, to dedicate yourself to whatever you like. And then maybe you grow up and you have a family, a work, and so most of your time is compartmentalized, and so the feeling of the time that you have is low. But in order to participate, you need some time, as you said. So, for example, I need to have the time to connect online and listen to the meeting, and maybe do my interventions, share what I want, and then I have to do the follow-up. And that can discriminate between certain types. That's another reason why in participatory experiments online, we typically have certain categories that are more represented than others. And these categories that are overrepresented are people aged over 55 or even 65 for a clear reason. That is the age of your life in which you return to have more free time for yourself. It's also possible that you are more civically engaged. You start feeling the need to give a contribution, or to think about the future generation. There's many reasons, but one reason is also that you have more time that you used to have 10 years before. And also men compared with women, because unfortunately in many social systems is the woman who is taking care of the family. And so you can imagine, if you're a mother, you have to take care of the babies and of the family. You don't have the time to do this. And then there are other categories. So the reason of time, I think, is relevant. It is an explanation not of why people don't participate, or at least it's a partial explanation of why people are not participate, but more of the fact that there are certain participants that are overrepresented and other participants that are underrepresented. But in general, I think that the lack of participation, it's explainable in a missing link between what am I achieving by participating and what is the effort that I need to take in order to participate. And it's never a pure trade-off, right? It's never like I pay a ticket and I watch a movie. It's not like that. But it's also true that if I have a feeling that even if I am contributing, it's not really changing anything, I will probably lose the interest. And my interest is also attracted by other stuff. There is always a chance to do something engaging by watching a movie, surfing the web, or playing a video game or stuff like that.
So what do we have to, let's say, solve, to fix in order to have like a better democracy? And I'm thinking about also, you have written a book that in Italian is La democrazia migliore, and in English, I don't know, the best democracy maybe.
Yeah. And the subtitle is also important because it says the technologies that are changing power. So we return to the original point. Okay, obviously, I don't have the receipts for solving the problems of democracy. I think it's part of the debate. People, scholars, practitioners, politicians are debating the crisis of democracy, and there's many possible solutions. A word that I'm really interested is not in this I mean, it's in the book, not in the title, but a word that I'm really that I really think is key is the word design, which I mentioned at the beginning, and I think it's nice to mention it. How do we want to design our digital interactions? So this, in brackets, solution implies as a precondition the fact that we accept that most of the democratic participation will be happening on digital platforms, right? Okay. How do we want to design these platforms? And I think it's a number of elements that could help citizens to engage a little more. One is the topic we've been discussing for most part of this interview, making the participation more entertaining. So including elements that could engage people, and obviously the game design is the main idea, but it's not the only one. The other one is, how do we narrate the participatory process? I think that a good storytelling of the participatory process is very important. And I think even if I don't believe it was a successful case, the Conference on the Future of Europe, I think that storytelling behind it was quite powerful. The idea was, I'm giving you, European citizen, the possibility to tell me, you policymaker, what is the future of Europe that you want to imagine? What would you like to, what Europe would you like to live in 10 years from now? It was very well constructed. It was powerful. It came, well, it was designed before the pandemic, but it actually came during the pandemic. So it was a moment in which we were all, in a way, facing this idea of, okay, what's going to happen next? How the world will be changing after this, if there will be an after. So it was a very nice storytelling. And third element, which is probably the most important, is this. The narration of democracy should retake on board the concept of complexity. And I'm giving you a 1-minute explanation, which is something I've been researching and writing about for quite a long time now. The design of technology, commercial technology, is based on very simple elements. One is the simplicity, another one is the speed of service, and the third one is the tailorization of the services. So we have very simple to use digital devices. We have devices that are trying to sell us the idea of very fast service, and that are also tailored on your needs. Now, all these elements are what we expect when we engage digitally with anything. But in democratic participation, this is not possible. Decision making takes time. It implies a high level of failure of at least one part or one opinion, and it is time consuming, going back to time. So a good way to have people at least aware and not disappointed of what participatory processes online in digital formats would imply is to bring back the concept of complexity, not selling out the idea that by clicking it, which was very popular when digitalization came into democracy, you just click on it and you are participating in democracy. Because that type of narration made the disappointed citizens that we are dealing with right now, people that don't see any actual change when they actually see the results of the participation.
If I have some more time, I have another couple of questions.
Sure.
So how do you imagine our social or political system in 10, 20, or 50 years? That annoys us. It's very difficult to reply. But if you have any idea about some possibility.
Well, I'm really fascinated by futures, and it's a very interesting field of debate. This very moment I'm reading a book on the history of future thinking. So how thinking about future has changed over the years. And so it went through different stages, and well, today we have actually a science for that. We have foresight, which is the scientific approach to thinking strategically about the future. So quite interesting element. So I believe that we will have to face a situation in which we will probably have more time for ourselves, and this more time will be the result of the use of technology. I know that what I just said has a lot of exceptions, and it's probably very Western focused. I know that it's not a global way of thinking. So I'm now looking more at the situation to which I'm more familiar, which is the West of the world. In the West of the world, the technology will give us more time to do things. Think about artificial intelligence and how quick you can have certain results compared with the past. Now, what use do we make of this extra time? That is quite a problem that we need to think about. I'm not just talking of the labor-related aspects. I'm also thinking of what do you do when you start thinking of a society in which not all of your time is spent on working on in an office or in a factory, which is the model we've been part of over the last 50 years. So, over the last 50 years, the broad idea is that once you finish to study, you enter into work, and the most of your life will be spent. Well, you do a lot of stuff, but most of the time you are at work. What happens when you don't have that necessity any longer? That will have very interesting democratic implications. So it's not exactly a description of the future world that I imagine, but I think it's one crucial challenge that we will have in a not so far future. The gain of time, a very bad use of this gain of time is to be more engaged into trivial uses of our digital tools, like scrolling and watching content, ephemeral content. That would be a very bad way of using it. A better way could be maybe re-engaging in social spaces, and that's why I describe it as a challenge.
I haven't asked anything about you yet. I mean, just about your personal background. I mean, professional background. So I would like to ask you if you want to share something also related to when you were a child. Where did you grow up? What were your hobbies?
Sure, absolutely. I think I am the typical middle class. I was born in a typical middle class family. I am very aware on not using the word normal because there is a very interesting book about this. The word normal has very different meanings wherever you apply it, so it's very misleading. What is normal? What is normality? In Italy, I was born in '76, so at the end of the '70s. But let's say I was a child in the '80s. It was in Rome, the capital city. Both my parents were working in the private sector, and I have a brother. So I will describe myself as a quite ordinary middle class family, living in a big city. And if I have to remember something of my childhood, I think books were an important part of it. This is something I'm doing with my daughters now. I've been taught to like books. My house was full of books, and there was a moment in which, in the summertime, when you have a lot of time and you are bored because you don't know what to do, I started to enjoy taking a book and reading it. That was an enjoyment that I remember very well. And I also remember that my mother, well, both my parents, but my father was working full time. My mother was taking care of us, so she was working part time. So my afternoons were with my mother and my brother. They were very strict with the use of television we could make. In my generation, the distraction was television. We didn't have digital mobile phones, of course, or stuff like that. So we could watch 1 hour. We could choose 1 hour to watch the TV in the afternoon. There was a very popular TV show back then, which was cartoons and a little entertainment. And once that was finished, we had to turn off the TV and do something else. We were lucky because, despite living in a big city, we were living in a place in which we had some internal gardens. So when the weather was nice, we would go out and play with other kids and so on, or we could engage in readings or drawing stuff. And again, this is something that I'm also using with my daughters right now. They have a little time, they can use the digital devices. I'm not against prohibiting them to use it at all. They are still young, so I'm mentioning the gaming with digital tools, but only for a limited time. The rest of the time, they have to do some other stuff. And that was a very important part of my education. I'm not saying that I'm fully safe from digital dependencies, in the sense that, as many of us, I am attached to my mobile phone, and I sometimes feel the FOMO syndrome when I don't have my mobile phone. So I'm not saying that this saved me from not being polluted by digital tools, but it gave me some elements to train my brain. And I still like to read books in a paper format, for example. I really love the books and stuff like that. So this is what I remember from my childhood. And it was a very how to say, quiet childhood. Very last thing, it's something I am passionate about. I'm very passionate about fantasy and everything, and so I still play Dungeons and Dragons. It's something that I really love. So everything that is related with Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons, and fantasy like that, in movie, in games, or in board games, it's something that I still enjoy to do, and that also came from when I was a teenager.
So I was thinking about Dungeons and Dragons in relation to gamification.
Yeah, maybe. Exactly. That's true. That's true. I was a dungeon master. I was the dungeon master, so the one who was telling the story to the others. Yeah.
And I mean, if you have any book that you were passionate when you were a kid or now?
Okay. So what? Okay, I have a couple of books that I really remember were an eye-opening. One is a classic. I think when I turned 10, a friend of mine gave me, so the present was The Hobbit from Tolkien. And I remember I didn't read the book immediately. I probably thought it was not interesting. So I didn't read right after that. Maybe, I don't remember, maybe 1 or 2 years later, I went back to that book and it was mind blowing. So it was precisely the type of story that I would like. Fantasy, dwarves, the hobbits, the dragon, the classic. And then obviously the Lord of the Rings that came later. So that is one. I would say everything that Tolkien has produced, but if then I had to find a book, I would say The Hobbit. The other one is The Lord of the Flies, which is a book which I read by chance. I think maybe it was in the house of my uncle where I would spend the summertime, maybe. And I really enjoyed the dark side of the book. No, I hope you read it. It's another classic, and so you see how human dynamics work, and even with child, how the power balances are established to the point that things are falling out of control of these young people. So that was also something that I really remember. I enjoyed, and and I thought it was a very nice reading.
I also love the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, but I have to admit that I haven't read the Lord of the Flies, but I will do. I will do after
Do
this
it.
interview.
It's
And
a very nice book. It's a narration of human society, basically. So the story looks like a child story, but it's not. So it's really worth. Actually, there is also a movie. It's quite old, but I would suggest to read the book.
thank you. And the last question, I mean, if you have any message for the people that are working in the field and that are searching and experimenting with new solution in relation to participation and
Yeah. Well, what I think is that it. So what I would like to see more, let's put this way, what I would like to see more is a cross-pollination of different disciplines. It happens to a certain extent. However, I still see there are a little bit of silos between people working in the field. So, for example, urbanists are very engaged into participation. It's really part of the people studying urban landscapes. But these people do not talk much with, for example, European policymakers, or at least with people interested in supranational policymaking. And on the same side, people looking at global dynamics, they tend to ignore or consider less relevant what is happening in certain fields. And then lawyers and political scientists and sociologists, they don't and designers. So it's now more frequent to find this type of cross-pollination. I am, for example, contributing to a project in which we are where there are like lawyers and political scientists like me, but also designers. So we try to compare with different perspectives. I think that it would be nice to have more of that more because sometimes you feel you're not talking the same language, and obviously you see the word from different angles, but it's actually when you find a common point, it's a very strong one, because it means it's a valid point from different perspectives. And so it's more difficult to achieve, but it's also more rewarding to achieve.
thank you a lot, Gianluca, really.
Thank you very much. It was very nice to be part of this podcast. Very good luck with your next episodes. And I'm now that I'm a subscriber to the podcast, I'm following the new episodes every time you publish them.
Really, thank you a lot.
Good.
Bye.
Bye.